Hello and welcome to Stretford Paddock. My name is Joe, that is Stephen Howson, and today we are talking about Bryan Mbeumo, Manchester United's latest target. Seems like the Cunha deal is basically done, Steve. It looks as though Liam Delap is potentially next on the line if he doesn't choose Chelsea. Bryan Mbeumo, though, this week seems to have stepped up a notch. Seems as though contact's been made. United have held talks with him, and it seems like maybe United are even at the front of that list, potentially alongside Newcastle.
Yeah, I was going to say Newcastle are also in the mix with this guy as well, aren't they? That's interesting, because I thought Jacob Murphy was really well liked by everybody there.
Yeah, well, I mean, they seem to need more, though, don't they, getting goals elsewhere rather than just from Isaac. We're going to look at Bryan Mbeumo, what kind of player he is, what he would bring to Manchester United, and sort of whether you think he would be a good acquisition. For it's 50 million or so is the number that you keep seeing everywhere, isn't it? So it's going to be somewhere in that ballpark, maybe 45 to 55 million, somewhere around.
He's only got
there.
a year left on his deal as well.
Yeah.
That might give us a little bit of wiggle room. Although if there's another team in for it, probably not.
That will help.
I see Paul Mitchell's bailed.
Yeah, he's left Newcastle. So I wonder if that will affect things in terms of their approach for him.
Let's hope so. Eh?
We'll have to wait and see. He also has a +1 potential extension that Brentford can activate. So realistically, he's got 2 years left.
They're going to do that.
Yeah.
Or they'll threaten to do that.
And if they don't, they could. So it might as well be 2. Let's get into some of his sort of overall numbers to start with, then we'll dig into where he operates, what he does differently to our players, and whether he'd work at Man United. Everyone knows, I think, 20 goals, 7 assists in the league this season, which is obviously exceptional, far better than any United player, other than the assist category, where I think him and Bruno Fernandes were very similar. And in terms of expected assists, basically him and Bruno top the league in terms of most creative players for their teammates, and what the teammates did with it.
He's also top in like one of the running stats, I believe.
Yeah, so he's also top in the distance covered stat, or as of the 15th of May, so 12 days ago, only Bruno Guimaraes had covered more ground in the Premier League than Bryan Mbeumo. We'll get to that in a little bit, but in terms of just those overall numbers, is it possible to score 20 goals in the Premier League if you aren't a good finisher?
I wouldn't think so. Do we know how many shots he's actually taken? The Premier League website does a decent one on stats. If you have a look on that,
I'll have a look.
It'll give you the total volume of shots that he's had. Because if he's done that in less than 100 shots, that's elite. If it's like 200, maybe not.
Yeah, well, I think so. Right, so in attack, okay, that was all season. Let me just turn that to this season. Because remember, this season he's overachieved massively on XG, and we'll get to that in a little bit in terms of whether that's a concern. But he's had 20 goals from 85 shots, which is...
It's nearly 25% conversion rate. It's outrageous.
Yeah, absolutely excellent.
That's fantastic, yeah. That's really, really good finishing and repeatable, obviously, because he's got 20 of them.
Do you like him as a player generally? When you've seen him, do you get a good vibe from him? Do you think he's a good player?
I think both times we played him this year, I think I've had him down as the one that I had as their start man during my preview. Yeah, I think he's a ball of energy. I think he's got a rat about him. He lifts that sort of energy and tempo and athleticism kind of floor for us. The only thing I don't like about him, and it's not even that I don't like it about him, it's that I think he'll play alongside Ahmad. I think Ahmad's increasingly looking like a right wing back option for us.
Right.
And him and Ahmad, a pair of angry ants, mate.
Yeah, it is worth mentioning he's listed as 5'7", so whether that's exactly bang on, he's a shorter guy. He's not very big, and Ahmad is similar kind of height.
Yeah, and if you're looking at as of today, you would expect our starting pair of sixes next season to be Bruno Ugarte, probably.
Yeah.
Right? Them two ain't scaring anybody. Lenny Yoro, even though he's tall, what does he weigh, about 9.5 stone or something like that? We need some bigger boys in our team. Cunha's a bit bigger, isn't he?
I think he's about 6 foot, yeah.
Dorgu plays like a bit of a big lad as well. But I still think you need just an absolute monster in there somewhere, ideally in midfield, I think. But yeah, I think that's my only concern, is that I think the Premier League is increasingly going to a big boys club. And we seem to be assembling a bit of a team of a not very big boys club.
Yeah, that could be a bit of a worry. And just looking at some of his other attributes, he's very versatile. So he plays most of his games as a right winger, but he's played over 40 games as a second striker. He's played 30 plus games as a centre forward. He can play on the left as well, although very much less so. Do you think that's played a part in it, that he can play as that number 10, but let's say whoever our striker is next season gets injured, you could play him up top. You could play Cunha up top. Do you think that's going into our sort of transfer ideology?
I think so, and I would say the setup that Amorim's got at its best is rotational and fluid.
Yeah.
The whole idea is that people, this isn't Louis van Gaal football. That's your square and you stand on it. It is meant to be. You overload and rotate and ghost into areas and aren't picked up. That's the whole idea of it. To break it down to its most simplest form, from what I saw at Sporting, because I don't think we've got much evidence of things that we want to see and it working at United. From what I saw at Sporting, it was very much you get possession into the final third, and you get your entire team into the final third. You use width and then kind of go around, and it's usually a flashed cross from that wing back, and it's usually a flat one into that corridor of uncertainty. And it's not it's very much Gyökeres, but it's not necessarily Gyökeres that's always getting him, and it's not necessarily him coming from a central position. Sometimes he comes from that right-hand side, sometimes he comes from that left-hand side, and you can see that there's movement within that forward three to get somebody else an opportunity to score from there. I don't know if Delap's the answer to go in the middle. I did a video this morning when I was looking at the option of possibly Mateta. I think Mateta, Cunha, and Mbeumo starts to look like a pretty. I mean, you're looking at the 60 goals essentially in those three in the league this season, more or less. A bit less. But when you look at United's, if you put that in front of a Garnacho, even Ahmad and Højlund, what are they on?
Yeah, well, under 20 between the three.
So if you was pure moneyballing it, how do we go up the league table? I think that's a very valid strategy, is just to go and buy goals.
Yeah, I think it is the strategy. I think that's what United have to do. I think it sounds like that is what United have sort of worked out, or not worked out, come to the conclusion, we need to add goals to this team. Because when you look at goals against, I mean, it's not good. But when you consider that we'd basically given up on the league 10 games ago for the Europa, we've conceded fewer goals than Brighton in 8th. We've only conceded 3 more than Aston Villa in 6th, fewer than Brentford, same as Fulham. Obviously, when you get lower down the league, we've conceded way fewer than those teams. But it's not horrendous in terms of goals conceded. It's the goals scored.
Especially with the context of us totally phoning
not caring. And we've literally won one of our last 9 games. With all that being considered, it's not utterly disastrous defensively. It's the fact that we've scored 44 goals in 38 games is the real issue. That other than the relegated teams, only Everton have scored fewer goals than us this season. Yeah. That's the problem.
And one of the things that, as we mentioned maybe a month or so ago, you end up with this discrepancy in goals that don't fully represent what's going on in the game, because you go and get a game dealt with 2-0, done. You're not in that position where you can end up going and conceding on the opposition. I go whatever. Game state matters, especially when you're looking at a big picture thing like we're doing right now, when you're just literally looking at how many goals did we score, how many goals everyone else scored. When you take into the context of, we were literally gambling on trying to win a Europa League final, which obviously we didn't, it matters. Yeah,
absolutely. One thing as well I want to talk about is the comparison to United's current players. Obviously, Ahmad, you mentioned him, you've referenced him. It might even be less of a competition, more of a combination of those two, with Ahmad at right wing back and Mbeumo in front of him, were we to sign him. Garnacho, though, it does seem as though he's probably going to leave in the summer. How do you think he compares to Garnacho? One thing that seems to be the decider for Garnacho, other than the fact that he's pure profit and he's worth a little bit of money, seems to be an attitude thing. Because there's plenty of players who leave Man United, but they don't usually get told in front of the squad by the manager to find a new club. That isn't just performance related, is it? How do you think he compares on that from what you know about him and his attitude?
I've never heard anything positive or negative about his attitude. Just nothing. I don't have any insight whatsoever into what his attitude is like, if it's good or bad. Yeah. I don't know if he gets on a smash. I don't know if he doesn't drink. I know nothing about him at all. And I tell you what, it's probably a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it probably is a good thing, because you might have heard if it was bad. Do you think that that's something else they're going to be looking for?
I hope so.
The reset of the
because I think that's something that we've massively undercooked in recent years. When you recruit attitudes, people talk about the changing of the culture. Every single manager has got the same book, right? They might have a different edition, but everyone's got the same book. It's about every single manager wants you to work hard to get married and settle down, so you're not slinging dick all over town. Like, every single manager wants you to do that. The way you get to do that is culture. You know, I saw one of my mates sent me the clip of Revel Morrison talking about how Gary Neville smashed his phone because he'd gone in the first team changing room to charge it, or Rio had put it on charge in the first team changing room, and Gary Neville smashed it. Think about how ruthless that hierarchy and standard was at Manchester United, that you're not even allowed to how dare you put your phone on charge in the first team changing room. Bosh, snapped.
Yeah.
And when you think about some of the shit that's been going on at the club since, you understand, like, Gary Neville never talks like he was that guy, which is disappointing.
Yeah, he doesn't at all. All he ever says about his playing career is like what Roy Keane was like, and he wasn't that good as a player. They seem to be his only two things. But like you said, that's extreme, really, isn't it? Like, if you heard now that, you know, Bruno smashed Aidan Heaven's phone, or
Joe, that would raise an eyebrow in the army, which is a relatively tough, like, you know, quite violent lifestyle at times. Yeah, especially in the block. You know, there's a lot of lessons get learned in the block. You know, and people might be told to quiet things down if they're perceived to be gobbing off in a manner that I think replicates a little bit of what you certainly saw in that era where Revel Morrison was coming through. I can't imagine that that's happening now.
No. Should it be? Or do you think things have changed and we do things a different way across society almost?
I can't answer that.
Yeah.
I know the army's changed.
Has it?
I know the things that happened to me and to others and that I saw is probably going to get you in jail at the moment.
Yeah.
And I think that... I don't know. I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing. Some people will call it bullying. Some people call it character building. I think the army suffers, and probably Manchester United in a way, they suffer from this sort of thing where you never see people praising doing your job. Roy Keane is the absolute epitome of this. People talk about his game in Turin and he's like, it's my job. Yeah. And people are like, it's the best I've ever seen anybody play. And they're like, and what?
Yeah, that's what I was meant.
Postman doesn't get fucking praise for doing, like, and that is there's an expectation of you do your job, and the military is the same sort of thing. There is an expectation you do your job, so you only get attention when you don't do your job, and sometimes that attention is quite violent. And I suspect Manchester United, at its best, when we was at our most winningest, the players all talk about it. This didn't come from Sir Alex Ferguson. It came from the players. So when you know, to loop it back round to what we was talking about, when you reset a culture, you have to reset a culture by the players. The players have got to police that dressing room. And I think that's one of the things that, I think it's what Roy Keane clumsily tries to point out when he slags off Bruno Fernandes. Right. Because he's not got this sort of stoic, hard exterior. He perceives him to, you know, throwing his hands around and perceives him in a certain way. I think Bruno Fernandes has got exceptionally high standards of himself and of his teammates. And I think that a lot of the frustration that you see on Bruno Fernandes is because everybody else doesn't meet those things. Now, I think society's changed, and I think there's far more people want praised for fucking doing their job. I think that's across the board in society, which means it'll be in football. Yeah.
And I do think as well, you know, like you said, it's about getting the players that bring that themselves. But the manager has to be able to have an eye for that and who to trust and who to put the captain's armband on. And it does seem as though, and I don't know if it's all good or not, but when you see like the pre-Europa League final press conference and Bruno's having a little joke at the manager's expense and they're laughing together, do you like that? And when we're talking about rebuilding, and Bryan Mbeumo is just one piece in this, but do you like that it's a more camaraderie with the manager than fear of the manager potentially, or do you think there is an element of fear there when he's punching tellies and throwing water bottles around?
I think that shows that there's a good working relationship.
Yeah.
I think that you can, and I think people misunderstand it even with us, as in me and you. Yeah. I think that people see the piss taking and the harsh way we speak to each other. Yeah. And flap because it's not common in the snowflake society that people exist in. And I think that when people see that, they don't know how to react to that. But I don't think you can take the piss like that out of people. Like I would not take the piss out of someone I didn't know. No. In a manner, or that I didn't like. If I don't like someone, I just don't talk to them. Yeah. And I just clam up.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's probably the same with a manager. I think if you weren't liking a manager, you'd sit there in a press conference just like one-word answering stuff next to him. Yeah. I don't think you'd chirp up and take the piss out of him.
No.
And I don't necessarily think they were taking the piss out of him. I think they were taking the piss at the situation that we all find ourselves in. And I think a captain should be allowed to do that.
Yeah. If anyone can, it should be the captain, shouldn't it? I think that makes sense. Just back to Bryan.
I think it's worth saying.
Yeah.
I think if Tyler Fredrickson was saying it,
yeah, that's a good point.
It comes across entirely different. Like, you won't be here next week. That comes across as disrespectful.
Yeah.
I think the captain saying it, especially, I think they've probably very recently had a. Because I think this gets framed differently if he knows he's going and if he knows he's staying. Yeah. I think if he knows he's going, he's taking the piss out of him. That comes across really raw. On, mate, if they've this week just had the conversation about Al Hilal have come in and offered us 100 million, do you want to go? And he's like, no, I want to stay here. And I think him then saying that sort of stuff is like, we're on the same team here. That's fine.
Completely. I mean, like I said before, speaking of Bruno, only Bruno and basically him and Bryan Mbeumo are basically at the top of the expected assist charts this season.
See, I don't want to hear people saying that we're not creating fucking chances if you've got him and him in the team.
There definitely will be. I do want to move on to a few sort of potential weaknesses as well, or concerns, should I say. One is this overachieving of XG, and I know that a lot of people don't love XG, but it is a somewhat decent way to look at how well, compared to the average, a person is performing. This season, he scored 20 goals off an XG of 13.5, meaning he substantially outscored what he should have done, essentially. 5 of those were penalties, which, again, if you score a penalty, that's 0.25 higher than you should have done.
So got 1.25 more off the penalty alone.
Yes. So if we strip some of that back, and we basically say he overscored by 5 this season, if next season that averages itself back out, you take away the 5 penalties, you take away a further 5 where he's overachieved, and it's down to 10. Is that still a value at 50 million? Is that kind of the level that is that? Or do you think he can just be someone that consistently is outscoring his XG?
The thing with XG is, and I do like XG, I think it's one of the best metrics for anything. I think that there's a lot of metrics that don't really mean cock or possession is a big one. Shots on its own is another that doesn't mean jack shit. No. But your expected goals, especially when it's the expected goals for and against, really I think does give you the general gist of how a game went. When it comes to a player and whether they've outperformed or underperformed, I think good players outperform their XG.
Yeah.
There can be an outlying season where one player can really outstrip their XG and then they can underperform it. I don't think it's true that every player will default to the average. I think that you have, like, for example, off the top of my head, Raheem Sterling and Gabriel Jesus always underperform their XG.
Yeah.
I would expect, without checking, Darwin Núñez massively underperforms his XG. Yeah. Why? Because I don't think them 3 are good finishers in the box.
No.
I don't know off the top of my head who's someone that always outperforms their XG, but I would think that if you're able to outperform your XG, it just means you're a good finisher because you're scoring from places you're not meant to score as many from.
A couple that spring to mind immediately, Heung-min Son and Kevin De Bruyne, across their career have massively outscored their XG, but it's because they're good at scoring from difficult areas.
Yeah, from areas that's like 1 and 2% shots.
One counterpoint that I do have to that, and I do think there's a chance, obviously, he's just a very good finisher. It was only 3 seasons ago for Brentford in the Premier League when I think he underperformed against his XG more than any other player in the league. He was sort of +5, or his XG was 5.8 goals higher than he actually scored. So there is, maybe he's improving because that number has been sort of chipped away each season, and this season he's gone the other way and he's looking really good. I do think it's something maybe to sort of consider with him. But for me, or for you should I say, if we do get him in and it reverts back to the mean and Bruno's taking penalties, is somewhere in the region of 10 goals, 10 assists from that position, is that good enough for 50 million quid?
I think when you think of the other intangibles that you get with him as well, is that his link-up play is pretty good. Yeah. He presses and wins the ball back pretty aggressively. There's intangibles to his game more than just the goals and assists, because you're getting goals and assists out of Garnacho, which is what a lot of people just keep bringing up. He's had goals and assists. You're like, okay, cool. He's had more shots than him this season by a lot.
Yeah.
And he's getting assists, but it's because he shot 7 times first. And, there's probably some sort of pattern setting going on there. So people probably get left unmarked when Garnacho gets on the ball. And occasionally when he passes at them, it's because everyone's gone to block his shot.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think goals and assists are nice. If you can get him more towards a 15 or higher kind of mark, and Cunha does the same, and either Delap or I think people are underestimating what Xerxes could bring with those two who like to get in behind either side of him. Could completely flip the dynamic.
Yeah, it could.
You could almost, instead of being like, technically it's a 3, 4-2-1. What if it ends up being like a 3-4-1-2 almost?
Yeah. I mean, just as the Garnacho example, his Bryan Mbeumo's got 20 league goals this season. Garnacho's got 16 in his career so far in 93 appearances. Obviously, they're not exactly the same player. One of them is coming through as a teenager and is arriving now as a 20-year-old. And Mbeumo has been in his 20s the whole time he's been in the Premier League. But to get those 16 goals, he's taken Garnacho 208 shots, which is obviously, even quick maths tells you it's more than 10 shots per goal. And Mbeumo was, like you said, around four and a bit. That is a startling difference in terms of just quality of even whether it's just decision making on when to shoot or finishing or both. That's a massive difference in it. So yeah, very, very interesting indeed. Just generally then, overall, we've been through a few different bits. Do you think there's the sort of, if United got Cunha, Delap and Mbeumo this summer, we've spoken all season, even pre-season, about not having enough goals in the team. Does that go far enough to address that? Does that turn us into a top sort of 7 or 8 attack in the league? Or is it just the start?
Not definitely.
Okay.
I think Delap is an upgrade on Højlund, but not by prime Robin Van Persie levels.
Yeah.
I think he's an upgrade in terms of his movement in the box. Maybe he gets more opportunities playing for Manchester United than he did playing for Ipswich. Maybe that results in more chances because his finishing is similar as well. I think he's more like 5 shots per goal. I think. Might want to check that. Whereas Rasmus Højlund, I don't even know. And the problem with Højlund is not necessarily that his finishing numbers are bad. It's the shots he's just not taking because his movement's horrendous. Which is it's a complete 180 argument with Garnacho. Garnacho's got the knack of getting on the end of stuff. Just can't finish.
No.
Or hasn't got the decision making, or telegraphs it. I don't think Delap, Cunha and Mbeumo is a top 6 front line.
Okay.
I think Mateta could be instead of Delap. And Delap could end up getting there. I think there's got promise there, but promise might not be enough for United next season.
Will it? Obviously, it won't. I don't know if it'll be enough for us to get European football or what, but will it be enough for us to start moving in the right direction? Is that what Amorim needs, or do you think?
Jesus Christ, Joe! If it's not, the other direction's 16, 17 for
no, I don't mean
innit?
Literally whether it's up or down, because I think we could have just as toxic a team, just as bad a front line, and just as sort of unsettled a goalkeeper or whatever, and still finish 13th. We could move in the right direction, but not really be moving in the right direction. As in, big picture, are United on the right lines with an attack like that, do you think?
It's better than this season.
Yeah.
Because you've got half of your wingers, 3/4 of your wingers out on loan, not playing for you.
That's mad, isn't it?
Yeah, you've got the 2 who do play for you are abysmal. The ones that have played all season. The one who's actually any good's been injured most of the season.
Yeah.
It's madness to me. I'm not saying go and boo. I don't get booing at half time and full time. I just don't. I just stand there devoed usually.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying go and boo anyone. Certainly don't boo any United players. But it's mad to me that Joshua Xerxes got booed for a performance that Højlund's done the entire season.
Interesting. Right. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Get your thoughts in on Bryan Mbeumo. Obviously, this deal is still a long way to go, but it's worth looking at why United seem to be interested and what he would bring to the team. Thank you, Steve, as always. Thank you for joining us. See you in a bit.